Do you wake up dreading Monday morning? I know a lot of people do. A lot of people, they get through the weekend and they go, oh gosh, not another Monday, got to go back to work. That kind of thing. I get it. Is it because it's a toxic workplace? Is it because you don't enjoy the work you're doing? What's the reason? In this video, we're going to be talking about 10 signs of a toxic workplace. And I'm curious, do you work in this kind of environment? Have you worked in this kind of environment? Maybe you're a person that's escaped. I know I've worked in different environments throughout my career that have some similarities to some of these, and I've moved past those. I've found new places that are different to be able to grow and thrive and not be facing these challenges. But a toxic workplace is something I believe, sadly, a lot of people in corporate America do work in, and we need to address it. We need to look at it and see what this looks like and what we can do. Because me, as a leadership trainer, a leadership coach, somebody who wants to see teams grow, thrive, and be successful, the quickest way to absolutely destroy team morale and destroy the productivity of a team is by having a toxic workplace and toxic leadership. And so that's something I want to call out. Here you go. 10 characteristics of a toxic workplace. Number one is if the people on the team have chronic stress or burnout. Is this something where you're all the time talking to them and they're just describing how I'm just always so busy or I'm always stressed. I've got all these high profile projects I need to get done and I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't have enough time. Or maybe they've got burnout. Maybe they're sick very often just because they need days off or time off because of how stressed they are. Because stress can lead to physical ailments and can turn into people becoming sick. I've seen this in different instances where people will work extended hours and they start losing time with family and friends or their children, and they're focused on all of these things, and it's because they are so stressed out, busy with everything they've got going on, and they're facing burnout. That's something we saw a lot during pandemic, just before the pandemic and immediately following afterwards, is the idea of burnout. There was the great resignation or the great reshuffle and all the people shifting jobs and going everywhere. Some of the reasons for that was pay, some was benefits. There was a lot of it that was just burnout and fatigue of people who are dealing with a lot of things. But chronic stress and burnout are the first key sign that you might be in a toxic workplace. Characteristic number two is if there is a lack of trust in leadership. Now, if you work in the type of place where people look and go, I don't trust my leader. They always have higher expectations than what's even possible. I don't trust them. I feel like they're only out for their own personal gain. I feel like they would throw me to the curb the first chance they got. If you're hearing any of those types of comments or that lack of trust, and you're not seeing leadership as a supportive, encouraging, and driving role, but a destructive one, that 100% is a toxic workplace. And that is something that me as a leadership trainer, I want to combat. I want to come out and try to help find problems in leadership and get leaders to realize you have to support, encourage, and build up your employees. You cannot tear them down, destroy them, and end up giving them a toxic work environment. They will not be productive. They will not be successful. And it's on the leader at that point of that lack of trust. Characteristic number three is high turnover. This is something, especially for me, I work with a lot of HR professionals. I come from an HR background. If you see high numbers of turnover, there is an obvious problem, whether you want to admit it or not. Most of the time, there is a very obvious problem. It could be your organization pays significantly less than another. It could be that your organization has a lot of toxic leaders in place or a toxic environment in place. Anytime you have high turnover, most of the time there is a problem. I've heard the phrase so many times, people don't quit bad jobs, they quit bad leaders. Now, people quit for a number of different reasons, just to be honest. They may quit to go get a better paycheck, a better benefits package. There are people that leave for those reasons. But if your turnover is really high and it is a concerning level of high, you're constantly having to recruit, retrain, and retain employees, then it's probably something you need to reevaluate. What are we doing as an organization that is driving these people away? Is it our pay? Is it our benefits? Or is it the working conditions and the environment? And because of those factors, those elements, it's a toxic workplace. Characteristic number four is poor communication. And this could take a lot of different turns or lots of different perspectives. This could be as simple as leadership is not communicating instructions to their team. This could be coworkers are not collaborating and talking to each other to get projects done. This could also be that there is so much gossip and rumors and back talking or backbiting and people just going back and forth like this constantly at each other that work does not get done. Or in the type of work environment where there is a lot of gossip, a lot of talking behind people's backs, a lot of criticism, a lot of sarcastic remarks at each other, and they're just going back and forth, that's a sign of a toxic workplace. Now, I get it. There are some organizations, people like to joke, people like to have fun. It may even be you get a couple people, they've got kind of a sarcastic sense of humor and they just kind of take jabs at each other and they're fine and they go on and they do their job. I understand that. That can happen in some instances. But if you are in a setting where it is destructive and harmful and it's causing people to quit or leave or really to discourage people or they're trying to avoid certain people, they're going to HR to complain or managers to complain, that is a toxic work environment because you now have very bad communication within your workplace. That is a cultural issue that leadership top down have to address. And if they don't, then you're going to go back to my last point where there's a lot of turnover. People are leaving. People will not stay in that environment if it's toxic. But that is another sign of a toxic work environment. Another characteristic here is micromanaging. And I know pretty much all of us are familiar with that. That's the idea of your manager kind of looking over your shoulder, that's always just on your case. And I always joke and share the story of, I've had different instances where I've had supervisors who constantly check in on projects in past roles, send an email and then come ask you, did you read my email yet? And what's the status update? And if you didn't respond when they wanted you to, they would come and it was not a simple follow-up. It was truly an annoying, overwhelming kind of follow-up. And it was, I gave you a time frame. My deadline isn't out for a couple weeks. I told you I would reach out if I needed help. All of these things are in place, and yet you're coming asking me every single day for a status update. Let me work and do my job. That's kind of the issue with micromanaging. It gives a very toxic environment because it shows a lack of trust in the employee. It shows a lack of autonomy because you don't trust them to get the job done on their own. And ultimately, it's going to cause this toxic work environment and lead to burnout and frustration. That or a lack of trust in management. Like I mentioned earlier, they're going to say, my manager doesn't trust me. What's their problem? I get my job done. I meet my deadlines. There again, you're going to see some of these traits tie in together like this. Number 6 is blame culture. If everybody's quick to blame somebody else, project fell through, well, that was that person's fault. Or, we missed the quote on that. Well, that person over there was the fault. And you see it shifting back and forth. Something goes wrong on your team and your leader goes, well, it was that person's fault. That team messed us up. That slowed us down. And they're quick to point blame and complain about others. That is a sign of a toxic workplace. You need to be able to own up to mistakes if they happen, pass them, improve, and move forward and go from there. But if you are in a culture that is full of just blame and finger pointing and all of those characteristics, you better believe that if you make a mistake, they're going to throw you under the bus and point fingers at you. It is not a supportive environment. It's not you learn from failure, you learn from mistakes, you grow from them, you improve, and you don't make them again. It's not that positive mindset like that. It's critical. It is demeaning. It is insulting in a lot of ways because it's just unacceptable to have any kind of mistakes, failures, and they're going to point fingers and tell you all the things you do wrong. That is a blame culture kind of environment. And that's another sign of a toxic workplace. Characteristic number 7 is lack of recognition. Now, you might be in a business. I know the joke in corporate America is, throw a pizza party and everybody's going to be happy because we had a pizza party and spent $50 on pizza for the team. And that's our attaboy for doing a good job kind of thing. But truly recognition, calling out when people do things well, is a benefit. I highly recommend it from a leadership training perspective. But yet an organization that has a lack of leadership, that's the opposite end, where employees feel undervalued, they don't feel appreciated, they don't feel like their hard work is even noticed or respected in any way. They become frustrated. They maybe don't try to work as hard because they're not feeling as encouraged or optimistic. Their productivity goes down. Maybe they face burnout and they want to go find a new job. Maybe they start looking more at different places to work than otherwise just because there's a lack of recognition. It's not saying everybody needs a participation trophy or, a pat on the back all the time. But if there is zero recognition, nothing whatsoever, any of us as humans, we all need encouragement. I think of the quote by Truett Cathy, the CEO, former CEO of Chick-fil-A, who said, when asked, how do you know a person needs encouragement? And he said, that person is breathing. Everybody breathing needs encouragement in some way or another. That recognition is that encouragement to your employees. If you don't do it, that's a sign of a toxic workplace. If you get no recognition from your leadership, that could be a sign of a toxic workplace. Characteristic number 8 is favoritism. I think that one's pretty straightforward. We're all familiar with it. If one employee obviously gets all the recognition, all the commendations, all the encouragement, all the support, none of the rest of the team does, we obviously know who the leader's favorite is, and that's going to be a problem. That causes a lot of tension in teams. It causes a level of competitiveness or discontent between coworkers. Not a good thing to play favorites. Do not do it. Experience favorites on your team. That's another characteristic of a toxic workplace. Number 9 is toxic leadership. This could be something where they're manipulative or they're highly critical. They're not encouraging, not supportive. Think of all these characteristics that I've listed of signs of a toxic workplace. If leadership does that, especially, I mean, you could have gossip between team members. You could have poor communication between team members. You could have, a senior employee playing favorites with a junior employee and teaching them all the tricks of the trade and not anybody else. You could have that between coworkers, but if leadership is doing it, especially, that is an extreme sign of a toxic workplace and is very quickly going to burn people out and make them want to find a new place to work. So toxic leadership, whether they're manipulative, critical, micromanaging, go back through all the traits that I've shared. If leadership and management's doing that, that is a huge red flag. Then lastly, number 10 is psychological safety. Now, this one may sound a little bit funny, but bear with me. It's the idea of if ideas are not welcomed and accepted and are just constantly rejected, people will get frustrated and people will get burnt out the same from a toxic work environment. So here's just a hypothetical. You have an employee that comes to their leadership. Hey, boss, I've got this new idea. I think this will improve our processes. Here's the research I've done. Here's why I think it'll be successful, beneficial. And they list out all the criteria. And leader goes, well, that's just not how we do it. I don't want to hear it. Go back and do your job. Well, instantly you shut down any optimism, any excitement they had. You shut down a potential idea that could improve productivity and resource management, and you criticize the employee for bringing you an idea. Guess what happens? That goes on a couple different instances. They stop bringing you ideas. They stop sharing. They probably are going to go and start looking for a new job. Then you've got turnover. So it all ties in together. But that's the kind of thing that will kill team morale and really hurt the effectiveness of a team, is when they cannot share ideas, they cannot discuss openly what challenges are going on, how they solve problems, what they feel like the team could do better. Those are all elements and characteristics that really do hurt a team. So these are 10 characteristics of a toxic workplace. Do you agree with the list? Would you add anything to the list? Have you worked for an organization that had a toxic workplace? I know I have in my past in different ways. Maybe not all 10 characteristics, but a couple of them I've experienced in different roles that I've had throughout my career. What are your thoughts? Do you think this is something that can be solved with leadership training? Do you think we need to really invest into training leaders and help them come out of these toxic behaviors? Let me know in the comments your thoughts, and be sure to subscribe, follow along for more leadership content, concepts, topics like this in the future here on this channel.